Why, hello there. So, I'm excited. Uh, I like to kind of look at the coaches on Tuesdays before a game, whether it be a Thursday game or a Monday game or a Sunday game or apparently on a Friday, because the players don't do anything on Tuesdays, but Tuesdays for coaches are crunch time. They don't really like to talk about it, and oftentimes you hear coaches say, yeah, I'd like to spend more time with my family, even though I tell everybody else underneath me to go home. You'll have coaches that are, working 20 plus hours. Those days are typically Tuesdays because they're not spending time with the players. These are the days where they're just crunching tape constantly, and they're game planning, and they're doing everything they can to prepare. Prepare for what? That's what I like to ask. What's coming up? And on Thursday, we're going up against the Dallas Cowboys, who are currently a powerhouse. They are an absolute powerhouse. And the Cowboys fans often say they're a powerhouse. They're quite braggadocious. The very claim that they are America's team is absolutely absurd. They were doing that to sell tickets, in back in the era of the Tacoma Dome. We'd have the monster trucks coming, and they were like, tickets are $25 and so exciting. That's all right. You only need the edge. It's something stupid like that. Like, the idea is that, come see America's team. That's how exciting they are. They're so exciting. They're America's team. And that it just fucking stuck, right? So it's like, the tickets are $25, but you only need the edge, because that's how exciting these games are. And so we're going up against America's team, and I like to talk about tendencies. So what are the tendencies of America's team? Well, we know about the tendencies of America. The tendencies of America are like the 4th of July. Quite explosive. And when you look at the Cowboys, their offense is very explosive. And their defense is very explosive. And as Texas would probably say, hell yeah, we're explosive, right? They're an explosive team. And if we're going to are we going into Dallas? I don't think they have not been down by a single point for a single second at home this season. That's how good this Dallas team is. Are we going into Dallas? I should have checked this. We're going into Dallas. So, to put it into perspective, if Dallas scores first, we're not winning. Because every single game the Dallas Cowboys have played this year, which is I think 5, they have led for every single second of that game. There has been 0 seconds where the opposing team has been in the lead. Be ready for that. If by some happenstance we score first, we would be the first team to do that to the Dallas Cowboys. I believe it was Dan Vans of the Seattle Forever podcast, which I recommend you check out. He says something I disagree with, but in this case, it's interesting. He says maybe we should change, instead of when we win the coin flip at the beginning of the game, maybe what we should be doing is we should, instead of saying we're going to get the ball at the second half, we should be getting the ball right away and trying to score right off the bat with our script. And before defenses have had a chance, I think his argument, this is me adding, right? Before defenses have had a chance to adjust to us so that at the start of the second half, the advantage is no longer there and we punt the ball right away. He'd much rather, I'm inferring, just get the ball right away, go down and drive a touchdown with our script, and then in the second half, play good defense and get the ball back. That's what I'm inferring. And so when you look at the Cowboys, I don't know how they're doing with the coin flipping. That's a different thing entirely. But in this case, it might be advantageous to get the ball first, go down there and score a point, just so we can, disrupt that pattern. So if we lose, people can at least say, well, the Seahawks technically, had such and such amount of seconds ahead of the Dallas Cowboys more than any other team, right? It might make us look pretty good. But I think we might actually... I don't know how the Cowboys are going to choose to attack us, is what's so interesting, because they can attack us in multiple ways. But when you look at how they are choosing to attack this year, it's the air... what is it called? Shit. It's the Air Coryell offense. It's basically, fuck it. Well, now that we've spent 2 hours running the ball, trying to get 3 yards, and that didn't work, let's just actually play football now and throw the ball. Which is something that Sid Gillman used to say. So, they're like running the ball, and then they're throwing these deep vertical passes down the field, and it's beautiful. And when a team will then switch to man to try to get rid of that, they switch to a West Coast system, which are all these little horizontal plays, and they just check to these little spots underneath, or they run an inside zone play. And it then forces the team to go back to zone, and then they switch back to a vertical. And so which is not something that the Air Coryell would do. They would just run verticals all the time, right? And then maybe run an inside zone. But this is what Mike McCarthy is doing with Brian Schottenheimer. And so I'm excited to talk about this Dallas Cowboys team because we've been talking so much about Shane Waldron and what is the identity of the Shane Waldron offense. And I've been saying, well, it's kind of like this weird West Coast system, which is, Bill Walsh, where you take 7 steps, you run the ball to set it up, and then by doing so, you create these horizontal spots for the quarterback, and we want these slants, we want these screens set up, and we want these, deep openings set up so when everything crashes down. But when we had Russell Wilson with Brian Schottenheimer with Chris Carson was crashing on the inside zone all the time. And then a lot of the times it really was just Russell Wilson throwing to these verticals to Tyler Lockett and Doug Baldwin and Jermaine Kearse or some, I think it was David Moore at the time. David Moore got a ton of touchdowns just running fucking verticals because he, if you have four verticals being run, there's only so many good defensive backs or good tacklers on the field. So if you have a number advantage, you check to an inside zone. If you don't have a good advantage, you check to verticals, and then you just let it fly. And that's part of the hybrid type of vibe. So that's the Brian Schottenheimer thing. The problem is that many times the Seahawk fans and even I felt like Brian Schottenheimer lacked creativity in the play calling, passing wise. And that's a matter of, and you know what? Me personally, that I think he lacks creativity in the running game, specifically against the Cowboys in the playoffs. But as far as throwing verticals, there's not much you can do I mean, you can do like trading, spacing down the field, but that just takes more time on the quarterback. The point of running verticals is to get to a specific spot on the field at a very specific time. It's spot routes. It's not, it's the exact opposite of the West Coast system. So that's why in horizontal passing routes, you got to be able to hit this time at the specific spot so the offensive line can create a passing lane. The quarterback has to throw down, or at least even field with the eyeballs. And you often see that the receiver's hands are around here, and the eyeballs are about even field as well. Whereas in a vertical, it's a lot of like lobbing passes, or these passes, like these jump passes down the seam, where these it's like cutting into zone, where they know that there's going to be these spots, these pockets open. So they're not trying to hit somebody in stride. They're trying to hit a spot, and the player in stride is trying to get there. And so because of that, they know, as the offensive play caller, yeah, we're going to throw this ball a whole bunch of times, but we're probably not going to hit it every single time. So what you'll often see with Dak Prescott is he'll throw like a really deep vertical shot, and it could be like a 40-yard bomb, but he won't hit it. And then they'll just be like, oh, we don't care. Because then the next play, they'll throw another vertical into a different spot, and it'll be like, a 6-yard gain, and that'll be just enough. And then they'll switch to a West Coast play the next play, and it'll be like a seam on a slant on the next side. And so because he can play both a vertical system and a West Coast system, it allows them to get teams off of a zone and off of a man. Because if you have a defense that can play man really well, like we can with Trey and with Woolen and with Witherspoon, you can shut down verticals. Because how do you shut down 4 verticals? You just play Tampa 2. What was the response of the air Coryell if you have 4 verticals going up through the air? Well, it was John Gruden's Tampa 2. You just put 2 safeties over the top. And then came back the West Coast type systems, the typical quarterbacks where you had to play all these little spots with specifically Brett Favre coming out of the Tampa 2 response, where you see all these little horizontal spot shots. And who was coaching Brett Favre? Well, that was I think eventually that was Mike. Why is his last name eluding me? Mike McCarthy. He was a part of that tree. The whole Green Bay tree, where they're playing the West Coast system, ironically, and they're trying to get the players to take these little spots underneath, kind of like Kyle Shanahan. You take these spots underneath, get the ball to the player, so the player opens their hands, catches it underneath while the quarterback's throwing the ball really low, catch the ball, and then you go up the field. You'll often see they're doing those to CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb's getting a lot of those balls. Ferguson's getting a lot of those balls. And it's a nice way for them to just move the chains. And then like on first down or second down, they're just taking vertical shots. And so what I would recommend that we do is we have to Julian Love needs to play like a hook. He needs to come down a little bit. And he needs to, it depends on the side. So him and Diggs would have to rotate. But basically it needs to be a matching system where we need to be patient and see, are they running a vertical or are they running a West Coast horizontal system? If they're running a horizontal, he needs to crash. if they're running a vertical, he needs to do a trade-off. So instead of falling into Tampa 2, we need him to trade off with somebody, because whenever there's a vertical, it clears out all of the space underneath, which just opens up a chain move, because there's typically a fifth vertical, or Dak will run underneath. So you need to, when you have a safety, for instance, if you just move the safety up, you have all this extra space that needs to, clear up underneath. You need to have the safety kind of bubble in so that your nickel corner, aka Witherspoon and Adams, your underneath corners, can stay down and kind of buzz underneath, and make sure that I would almost have them, like, again, we're doing man match, right? For verticals, I would have him match up on the vertical that comes up, or maybe just kind of hover between the two, and then you have Witherspoon or Adams man, or just literally just follow the running back or whoever is the check in there, and just do a containment, because that's how a lot of their explosive are happening off of verticals. Is they're just, you're going to cover all the verticals? Well, we're just going to throw to the underneath, or I'm going to break containment. And then, so you're going to go ahead and just man up, or you're going to throw some safeties really high. Like you'll see, instead of going into press, if you give them like 5 yards of space or 10 yards of space, they'll just check to a West Coast system and throw a spot route. And so they're like, okay, we're just going to call a hook. So the wide receiver, like the wide out, if Woolen for some reason is asked to do be 10 yards out to get ready for a vertical, and he's covering CeeDee Lamb on the wide out spot, they might just be like, okay, well, I'm going to have Ferguson go out with you into a double, and then we're going to have you do a hook, and you'll just go out there for like 5 yards, quickly turn around, catch the ball, like 2 yards, turn around, catch the ball, and then Woolen won't have enough steps to make a break on the ball. You'll quickly turn inside. Ferguson will act as a blocker, and then you'll take off down the road. So there's like all these little foils they have for how you want to play off of the vertical. And it's funny because if you try to space all of this out defensively, like, okay, we're just going to cover the verticals and then cover the spots, then they just got Pollard and the other kid, I can't remember. They'll just run the inside zone. And it's basically just the inside zone. But they have such a good offensive line that that they'll take their guards and their tackles, and they'll just push your guys, your 3-tech out of the way. We basically want to try to stop Pollard the same way that they're stopping other teams. They have Armstead, and then they have Parsons. So Armstead, he's, what I've been seeing against the Commanders tape is he was crashing into the third step. I often talk about you got to pop the bubble. Dan Quinn is this defensive coordinator. And when I talked about how he coaches on the D-line, he pops the bubble, and then he's got containment on the outside, and then the other player on the inside, his job is to hit that fifth step. So Armstead, he hits that third step, he pops the bubble. And this is either where the quarterback is going to be on the fake of the play action, or it's where the running back is going to be. So at either way, either the quarterback is going to move to step 5, which is where Parsons wants to be, or the running back is going to be at step 5, where Parsons wants to be. Or whoever, it depends on whoever has assignment. But oftentimes on the run play, I've noticed it's Parsons that has run play assignment. Likewise, on our defense, we'll probably have Williams, whose job is to get to step 3, and then you'll have Reed, whose job is to get to step 5. They tee off of each other. You have Jones on outside containment on one side, and then you have Mafe on outside containment on the other side. And they all tee off based off of the timing. So what's happening is Zach Martin in particular is just moving people out of the way so that with like a trap play. So Williams, we need him to not just get pushed out of the way by Zach Martin, because if that happens, those inside zones, basically it's going to be Bobby Wagner one-on-one on those inside zones, because Jordan Brooks is going to have to be covering Ferguson or the slot on his own. And so it's Bobby Wagner on Pollard or on a center. And so if Zach Martin or a left tackle or somebody is able to pull in on a trap play and just push Williams out of the way, like it looks like the Cowboys have been able to do kind of all year, it's going to be a problem. Not because they're going to get a lot of yards. Pollard might get 66 yards. Like they might not like have a whole bunch of 100-yard rushers. They might collectively get over 100 yards rushing, sure. But the point is they'll start getting gashes, and then it'll set it up for those little spot plays, which then will turn into first downs, and then they'll take a shot for a vertical. And like I said before, you don't get too excited if they take a shot for a vertical and, oh yeah, good play, he missed it. Because they might just say, fuck it, we'll just throw every single down. And if we are on 3rd and 10, well, that's okay. We'll just get 15 yards this next play. Because if we just throw for 15 yards of completion, who needs to run the ball for 3? And that makes me want to get back to kind of the heart of what's making this Dallas offense work. It's the heart of what makes the passing game kind of in general work. I want to start with a quote. You can never really be sure with the internet. The quote is from, I guess, Woody Guthrie. I guess. Any fool can make something complicated. It takes a genius to make it simple. All right. So Aaron Rodgers described Bill Walsh's West Coast system as beautiful, as like art. Everyone describes Bill Walsh's system that way. It's timing, the way it sets everything up. If everyone's doing it perfectly, you could just do exactly what you want it to do. And once you get it, you can start really understanding how to masterfully attack a defense and move your offense down the field. You just got to make sure everyone does everything exactly the way it needs to be done, though. Because if one player drops the ball, the drive is dead. If the running back doesn't choose the right hole, suddenly you're way behind schedule. If the tackle, gets a 5-yard penalty because he false started, suddenly you're in, 2nd and 15 and you're fucked. There's no real way, it often feels like, to overcome mistakes within the West Coast system. There are plays, but the plays often telegraph, themselves. Like, okay, you're here, then you're at the 7th step. Okay, we've defended these areas of the field. Now you have no chance whatsoever of making it. Huzzah, you're fucked. Punt the ball. I'm oversimplifying it because I don't have the time. But there's something to be said about, well, why don't you just throw the ball down the field? We're just going to get some really fast guys who are really tall. We're gonna spread them out wide, and we're gonna say, go get it. You can't cover everybody, and then we're not really gonna throw like on any timing specifically. We're just gonna throw to the open spot. And so there's nothing necessarily beautiful about it. It's reflex based. It's so simple. And to get back to the quote, it takes a genius to make it simple. Any fool can make something complicated. And we've talked about Shane Waldron. He's doing these orbitals and stuff. And we're like, why don't you just run the ball? And sometimes, well, why even run the ball? Why not just throw for 15 yards every time? Why not just throw 4 verticals? And so Sid Gillman, he's credited for the inventor of the forward pass. He was the guy who was like, well, we're running into just a massive bodies over and over again. Why don't we just take the ball and throw it into all that space that's over there? We could just throw it into all that space that's over there. There's so much room. So he's like, it's technically not against the rules. So he started throwing forward, and it changed the game forever. And created a lot of the basis of the way that we have route trees and the different things that we do now, yada, yada, yada. He ended up having a ton of great coaches underneath him, including Don Knoll from the Steelers, who was there for like 30 years or something like that. Tony Dungy was a part of that route tree. There's a really funny story I actually found. There's a guy named Lou Reimkes. He was the head coach of the Oilers for 1 year. He beat Sid Gillman in the championship his first year as a head coach. And then the following year, during training camp before the season starts, he says his team can take 2 weeks off and he takes them to Hawaii. Imagine during training camp before the season starts, Pete Carroll's like, we're going to fucking Hawaii. Not to practice, just to relax and hang out. I want my team to be well rested before the season starts. We're going to go hang out in Hawaii. We just won a championship. And then the preseason starts. Things aren't going so well. And then the season starts, and you're 1-3-1. The owner then immediately fires Lou Reimkes, and then he's never coached again. He's blackballed from the AFL. I think it was. It wasn't the NFL at the time, but I just found that to be a fun story. Part of the Steelers timeline, other than Tony Dungy, there's also John Fox. There was also, I'm trying to go off the top of my head, Don Capers, because Sid Gillman had connections not just to the Rams, but he was also connected. Which Ram team was that? I think it was the St. Louis Rams. Or was it the Chicago Rams? No, it was the Los Angeles Rams. And then he was with the Los Angeles Chargers. And then he was with the San Diego Chargers. And then later, he was with the Dallas Cowboys, and then the Houston Oilers, the Chicago Bears, and the Philadelphia Eagles. Sid Gillman. Yeah, so all over the Chargers, and then the Dallas Cowboys and the Houston Oilers. Don Coryell, the man behind the vertical offense, who continued Sid Gillman's belief of, why even run for 3 yards? Let's just throw it for 15. Fuck it. If we don't complete a pass on first down, if we don't complete a pass on second down, fuck it. We'll just complete a pass for 15 yards on third down. Sid Gillman. Don Coryell, kind of the same thing, except he had like Kellen Winslow masturbating in the locker room in front of other players and setting tight end records that weren't beaten for a very long time. This team was absolutely crazy. He played for St. Louis. He coached for St. Louis for a long time, and then eventually coached for San Diego. And his team was absolutely amazing and set a ton of NFL scoring records, champions, inspired Marty Schottenheimer, Mike McCarthy, and Brian Schottenheimer, which ended up inspiring Russell Wilson. But when you go all the way back to just Sid Gillman, his offense was, we're going to run the inside zone, and then we're just going to throw over the top. Inside zone, they're going to bring everyone in, and then we're going to throw over the top. And then Don Coryell was, we're going to run the inside zone, and then we're going to have 4 people run over the top. Inside zone, 4 people run over the top. We're just going to do more of it. And when we had Marshawn Lynch, the Seahawks, this is the Marty Schottenheimer, Darrell Bevell was a part of the Brett Favre, Mike McCarthy, Brian Schottenheimer. That was all connected to the Coryell system, right? All of that was running gun. We're going to throw verticals down the field. We're also going to throw these spots. It was this weird hybrid system of Coryell and Bill Walsh. See what I'm trying to get at? It's all coming full circle, I swear. We have Russell Wilson come in with Marshawn Lynch running the inside zone. And some of his best plays were these verticals on the outside, just running verts, and then it's Russell scrambling to the outside and just lobbing it up, just waiting for a guy to get open on a vertical, or waiting for a vertical to turn around and come back, like a long comeback. Typically Doug Baldwin, right? Is just, it's kind of funny now to kind of look back, because it's sometimes players want like this super complicated Sean McVay, or we want this West Coast. I've even been talking about we want the ball over here, timing all. But sometimes you look at the Cowboys, and really what they're doing is what a lot of people have been saying we need to get rid of. We need something more complicated. This is like a high school offense. Well, I mean, some of the most powerful offenses in NFL history have been inside zone, 4 verticals. If they decide to switch to zone coverage, and then if they decide to switch to man coverage, we're just going to switch to a West Coast system and throw to a little horizontal thing. And then whoever is better at both systems wins the game. It's this Dallas Cowboys team on offense is really, really good at throwing verticals right now. They're so good at it. And it's making me wonder why they haven't been able to compete better against the Eagles. That game against the Eagles was really close. And it kind of just goes to show, how important having good trenches is. the Cowboys secondary is really good. They have DaRon Bland, who set the NFL record for pick sixes this year, which I believe is 5 now, 6. Yes, 5. He has 5 pick sixes this season, which is insane. And we've been talking about Geno Smith, and for some reason I've been talking a lot about Matt Schaub, and it's because Geno Smith has been showing he's been throwing the Matt Schaub career ender route, where it's the out route. This thing's going to get picked and eventually taken all the way to the house. And then Seahawks fans are going to freak the fuck out because they're reaching their patience. And it's not necessarily his fault. It's the play caller that keeps calling it. And so I'm wondering how he's going to do against a defense that is going to collapse the pocket into him, getting rid of his inner step, and is going to rush the outside. And so if he's being asked to throw to a team that's picking that ball off and taking it to the house routinely, and then we have an offense on the Cowboys side that if we can't do our man match properly and they switch to a West Coast system and we can't, and they're getting yak off of that, or if they're just like, we're going to run inside zone, which is what the 49ers did on us, and they just run all over us. Like any one of those three things, if we can't stop any one of those three things, it will tee off the other one. It enables the machine to start running. And this is what I talk about with Shane Waldron is he doesn't do any one of those three things well, and he doesn't set up anything to enable all three. And when you look at what the Dallas Cowboys offense does, it specifically enables each offensive system that has put offenses in Super Bowls. All three of them are in this Dallas Cowboys offensive system, and they have players versatile enough to run it. And then they have coaches that have been surrounded by coaches who made those systems. And if not, their dads were. So it's a scary offense. And then Shane Waldron doesn't know how to pitch it on our side. And so we're the exact opposite of their offense, even though we're kind of trying to walk away from what that was. It's literally our old coach, Brian Schottenheimer. And then on their defensive side with Dan Quinn, they're so good at beating teams and making them one-dimensional. But our offensive coordinator is making making our own team one-dimensional with his own play calling. So then when we run the ball, Armstead is going to collapse to the third step, and Parsons is going to try to get to the fifth step, and then their outside ends are going to try to get in. And here's the other thing: they're only typically rushing with 3 guys. So if we are rushing, yeah, we can get everyone in. If we're not running the ball, they're just going to drop everyone else into coverage. They're going to have like 8 people in coverage because they're getting home with 3 guys, because that's how good Armstead and Parsons just alone are. I'm the third guy's eluding me. I apologize. So if we don't run the ball and force Armstead to get to the third step and Parsons to collapse to the fifth step and force everyone else to try to get to the seventh step, then they will only send 3 guys at us and 8 people will be in coverage. And then Geno Smith will be having to check to that out, which is where they're getting the pick sixes, and it will lead to a Matt Schaub type experience for him where people will be burning his jersey. And what city will he be ending up in? Because no one's going to pick up his contract at the end of the season for $31 million back-to-back years. I know I wouldn't. Not because it's necessarily his mistake, but Sorry, you already burned your bridge with the fans. And Shane Waldron, I wouldn't pick up his deal either if that's what he's going to do. So you have to run the ball so that they send more than 3 every single time. It's interesting. And I haven't even mentioned Stephon Gilmore. Stephon Gilmore's on that team. Do they still have Tay Diggs on that team? That Cowboys defense is absolutely stacked. And when you add in Dan Quinn, knowing the tendencies of how Pete Carroll likes to call plays, and meaning how he likes to go about the game, and you add in the fact that Shane Waldron is so far a one-dimensional play caller and won't use the entire field, and this Cowboys offense is using everything, not just all of their players. I haven't even talked about Ferguson, their tight end, who will rotate into halfback and fullback positions and take on blocks and also go vertical down the field. He's amazing. He's a great target. He's a great player. If you think Kittle had a good game against us, watch out for Ferguson. Their offense uses the West Coast system and the Air Coryell system in perfect harmony. And they're putting up 40 points on teams that don't respect them. And part of that is because they're also getting pick sixes against teams that won't respect their defense. So if the Seahawks want to compete against them, they need to respect the heritage of the football game. And I'm specifically talking about our offense. We need to run the ball, even if it's not successful. Or we need to decide to run verticals. I've talked about this. Shane Waldron needs to choose an identity. He has chosen no identity. You can't even begin to move past being one-dimensional into being two-dimensional. Two-dimensional is identity. Because once you do that, that means you can start branching off and doing things. That's the second dimension. Three-dimensional is when you can start getting the gears turning. We're at one-dimensional. He's just calling plays. And it's not setting anything up. Yeah, he's throwing the fades to move the safety over so that he can have the flats open for JSN so that he could throw to the outs over here. But he's not getting anything engaged. And we're not moving the chains. There's no actual rhythm to what he's establishing. He's just creating motion amongst the defense. And then they're motioning and shutting us down. So, yeah. Do I have any plans for how to stop this Cowboys attack? Yeah, we need to match. And we need to be patient. And they're going to try to trick us. There's this, remember how Peyton Manning would be like, Omaha? It's a loud O sound that breaks through the noise. It's kind of like how hike. It's a loud I noise that breaks through the noise. And so the whole player, especially on the wide sides, all the players can hear you, and it's like a cadence thing to throw off a defense. So if you hear him be like, let's go, or something like that, I think that's what he's saying, let's go. It's the equivalent of Omaha. Russell Wilson will try to do things like that. Aaron Rodgers did things like that all the time, where he'd be like, right? Where he's trying to change his cadence and like really, really spike it up. And it's just to kind of elicit a reaction. So Dak has been using kind of like a long O sound to try to fool defenders. So if you're worried about somebody being offsides today, like Mafe, because I think he had some earlier in the year, he might have gotten it better. but I think Dak has been getting that one routinely. So that's something to look for. He's just been a really smart quarterback this year. He's always been a smart quarterback, and he gets hated on for reasons I don't think are appropriate. I think he's always been a really, really good quarterback, and when you watch him play, he's always progressed incredibly well. And when he gets injured, it's not his fault that his leg broke like a chopstick when stomped on by a Decepticon. Like, come on now. Let's give Dak Prescott his praise, because he's earned it, especially this year. It would not surprise me if they put up 30 on us. If they throw a pick six, they'll put up 40 on us. Like if Geno does. Pete Carroll said a lot of the right things this week. You'll know my feelings on Shane Waldron. He's got to prove it instead of saying it. Clint hurt. He needs to basically put our guys in a good position to succeed, which means we got our asses kicked by trap plays last week. Hopefully with 7 days of practice, he's able to put our guys in a walkthrough situation to teach them how to block up and shed and anticipate trap plays, because the Cowboys are going to hit us with trap plays. The 49ers are going to hit us with trap plays again next week, and the Eagles are going to hit us with trap plays. So if it turns out we just literally can't defend trap plays against the run, and you guys can't handle losses, then you might as well quit watching football, because you're going to watch three losses in a row if we can't stop trap plays. Because inside zones and trap plays, those both go hand in hand, and that's going to be really painful to watch if it turns out that our defense is incapable of stopping that. It'll just create a beautiful seam. And getting skinny isn't really Pollard's thing, but you can create a big old hole with Zach Martin and company. And in the way that Ferguson lines things up on the outside, I saw that man just mauling people downfield. So if you see like Witherspoon just kind of eat some shit in the dirt, that might happen, because this offensive blocking scheme from the Cowboys is for real. I hope that Abe Lucas is healthy and ready to go. And as Terrence Jones said in the chat, I also don't see Seattle getting a win against Dallas, unless, like I've established kind of all year, Seattle just plays with the fundamentals, but we're going to get outcoached. Dan Quinn is going to beat Shane Waldron into the ground. And Clint Hurt is a sophomore head coach. I'm not sure if he's ready for what Mike McCarthy and company are going to bring. Considering just the way that this hybrid system is set up, I would like to think that our defensive backs are smart enough to play, but they've proven that they can't tackle. So when you add in the West Coast horizontal play calling that Mike McCarthy's going to bring in, and Dak's ability to play action to it and audible to it because he's smart enough to see it. And again, you're not running orbitals like Shane Waldron. They're just having Ferguson move over here or check to the fullback spot, or he'll start in the fullback spot and check to the slot. They'll have a slot move over here. You don't need to do anything crazy. This has been stuff since the 80s. Air Coryell. You just identify if it's zone or man, and then everyone knows, okay, if it's man or zone, you run your route. Since we know that guy didn't move, everyone knows beforehand because of the let's go, right? He's doing a little cadence beforehand that we're going to do man. So we're going to call a vertical, or it's zone. So it's zone. So we're going to call a vertical. It's man. So we're going to call a spot. and then we're just going to roll with that. And if we can't tackle against those spots on the West Coast offenses that they call, then we're doomed. It's going to be like the 49ers game. They're going to run up on the inside. They're going to get a bunch of yak because they're going to make guys miss. And then they're going to get these spot plays on the outside. They're going to get yak. And then we're going to crash down and try to stop it. And then they're going to get a couple deep verticals down. Sure, they're going to miss some, but as we've established, because they're going all the way back to Sid Gillman, fuck it. If we throw 3 15-yard passes, 2 of them are incomplete, but 1 is complete, at least we got a first down. Let's keep rolling. Anyways, I appreciate you all for coming in and viewing today. Please like and subscribe for First Kick Seahawks. I keep forgetting to do that at the beginning of the stream. I've kind of teased Dana O'Gorman from our turf. What is it called? I'm all over the place today. I've teased podcasters in the past for forgetting to shout out their own stuff at the beginning. But when you have so many notes and stuff in front of you, it is easy to forget. But I appreciate you all being here. I will do another stream tomorrow. I probably will make it about turnovers. I covered Bland a bit today, but I want to go over the hot maps of Dakota. And of course, we've gone over Geno's hot maps, but I haven't for a couple weeks. So I want to go over that a little bit more since he's played against the 49ers, and we'll see if things have changed recently. There was one last message, so I want to look at that before we go, from Terrence. Smith for Seattle having a good game back in his home state. JSN started the season kind of poor because he hurt his hand. But what's been happening is DK is running this fade route on the left. And kind of going back to what I've been saying about Coryell, where, just throw a 15-yard pass. We'll have another opportunity for 2 more downs. Many times Geno is just throwing a fade to DK, and he's not really having a chance to catch it, but it's moving that free safety over. And I know Dan Quinn likes to keep just one safety over the top. So I'm not sure it will be as applicable this game. When it comes to Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think that's who you're referring to. For some reason, I'm forgetting in Jigba's number. But he's Waldron, by moving that safety over and by having Tyler Lockett run those outs on the side, it's moving the 2 safeties over. And since Smith and Jigba has all that room in the middle in the slot, he's been getting these big, like 12 to 15-yard chunks. So if you want to get Gilmore and Brand out of the way on the outsides, I don't know if Diggs is still on the Cowboys. I can't believe I forgot to check. It'll be interesting to see how he does against that high coverage safety. If he will get any receptions, he will get targets, but I don't know how he'll do against this front against the Cowboys, because there are games where he just flat out disappears. More likely, what I would expect to see from him is screens to the flats, both flats, but most likely the near side flat, the left flat, as a reestablishment of our base. What we'll see with Waldron is he likes to not run to the left side. I like to run to the left side to make it the near side, because then the quarterback can see the whole field, and keep the blind side to the short side. But what he'll do is, when he's running those fades to DK on the left, he also will have either Bobo, who's a big receiver, or Al Parkinson, who's a big receiver on the left side, blocking for Smith and Jigba, and then he'll have a nice little lane. And we haven't had a good screen game ever under the Pete Carroll era, so until we got Smith and Jigba. So it's really, really nice to have him there. So if I would not expect him maybe to have a good game in the slot as far as deep yards, but I would expect him to have a good game screen-wise, underneath, bouncing around, getting those extra maybe 3 receptions on 5 targets, maybe 4 receptions. All right, that's all I have. I need to get some rest. It's late. I appreciate you all. You all have a good night, and go Seahawks.